Welcome back, everyone, to Oxygen for the Soul. This week's Parsha is Parshat Devarim. We are beginning the fifth book of the five books of Moshe. The word Devarim, Deuteronomy in English, comes from the Greek word, which means to, or the Latin word, which actually means to repeat, repetition. Why is it repetition? Pasuk says, Ela had Devarim asher diber Moshe el kol Yisrael be'ever hayarden. And these are the words that Moses spoke to all of the Jewish people on the other side of the Jordan. Now, the one thing that people point out, the Chachamim point out when it comes to this pasuk is the words Ele hadvarim. The word Ele in the beginning of the first word of the parsha is strange. It should say ve'ele, and these are the words. You saw this, by the way, and the other parshiot before. You looked at Parshat Shemot, Ele Shemot, right? Vayikra, right? And even in the beginning of Bamidbar, right? It says, one second, let me find the pasuk. Pasuk says, I'm just not remembering it right now. Let's look. It says in the beginning of Bamidbar. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe. Each one of the Pesukim that start all the parashiot. Bereshit is the beginning, but then since then, from the beginning, the bet, remember, is closed, right? You can't go before it. And then once we're moving forward in time, every beginning of every book starts with a Vav, except for Dvarim. Why? The Vav is a hook. The Vav connects what came to what was, right? It's always connecting us to the past, and it was connected to the past. Over here, you don't see that. It says El Hadvarim. And therefore, our Chachamim point out that in this pasuk, this parsha is disconnected from the rest of the Torah. How do we understand who received it? Massive machloket between the Rishonim and Achronim. Is this Moses' own words? Is it prophecy? What kind of prophecy? Lower prophecy? Higher prophecy? We're not doing that today. Anyway, El Hadvarim asher diber Moshe el kol bnei Yisrael. Interesting to note that these are the words that Moses spoke. It's interesting because it wasn't too long ago, in the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus, where Moshe says, Ish en dvarim anochi, I am not a man of words, right? Here's someone who God says, hey, I want you to be the guy that goes out and takes out the Jewish people. I want you to be the guy that goes out and explains to the world my message, my ideas, but he was unable to do so, right? He says, no, I don't have any words. Over here, he's saying what? I am a man of words, right? I have a lot to say over here. And the question is, why the change? And interestingly, I mentioned this before this week, the idea of the Maharal, why would God choose a man who was a stammerer, someone who cannot speak, someone who cannot be articulate, someone who cannot express himself, and task that person with the man who is going to become the oral giver of Torah, the lawgiver, the Torah Sheba'al Peh. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai, u'Misra Yeshua. So, number one is that Moshe's superpower was that he could not speak. Right? Whenever you spoke to him, you're like, oh, I don't have patience to listen to this guy. But when he spoke Divrei Torah, everyone knew that what he was saying came from Hashem. There was no doubt about it. It was clear that when Moses spoke Torah, it was coming from an otherworldly source. But our sages tell us that after 40 years of speaking and speaking and speaking and speaking, he corrected whatever disabilities he had. Okay, he was able to get himself to a place of sharing his own ideas. And this is profound because we're seeing here a person who has gone through a tremendous amount of growth. Okay, Moshe unable to express himself to now, hey guys, 1 second. I call this class, something about reflecting. And it's important for us to think about this, where this Shabbat is Shabbat Chazon. It's the Shabbat of vision. It's the Shabbat of us reflecting a little bit about, where we are in life and where we're going. And why is it important? I'll give you a mashal. There was a young boy who was super busy, very ambitious. And he was constantly frustrated about, all the things that, he could not accomplish. But moving through life, being as ambitious as he was, succeeding on some levels and failing in others, he finally gets to a point where he just feels frustrated. His grandfather calls him up and says, listen, I want to talk to you. Let's spend some time. Come out to the woods. Come to my cabin. The boy comes up to the grandpa's cabin, spend some time together, and he sees that his grandson is vexed. So what does he do? He says, let's go out for a walk. They walk over to the river, and he says, when you look into the river, tell me what you see. So he says, I see my reflection. He says, now I want you to take a stone, and I want you to throw it into the water and tell me what you see. He takes a stone, throws it into the water, and what does he see? He says, I don't see anything. He's like, guys, it's just the water is disturbed. He says, the same is true with life. All too often in life, we move at a pace, right, where we're disturbed. There's so much movement that we can't really see ourselves in the process. We don't remember who we are in the process. And therefore, we need to be in a place of reflectiveness, reflecting on who we are. The idea of Moshe pausing here and saying, hey, 40 years have passed. Let's review what this 40 years means, so we can have a deeper understanding of who we are. As Jews, we do this every single week. We read the Torah. The Sefer Devarim is the biggest Musar Sefer. It says, Moshe Kol Yisrael, right? Why Kol Yisrael? Why not to Bnei Yisrael? And the answer is that he is speaking to all of us in every generation, to me and you today, not just to the Jews that lived in the desert before. When we open up this book, we're reminded of who we are. If we calm ourselves down, you could actually hear Moses' voice reaching out from the generations of time and space, giving you etzah, giving you wisdom for your life today in 2023. That's what this is. This book is not just a book of, oh, remember when you did that? Remember when you said that? No. This is a book that is written very carefully. It's called Mishnah Torah. What does the word Mishnah means? What does the word Mishnah mean? The word Mishnah means repetition, but the Emek Hadavar has a deeper explanation. It says the word Mishnah comes from the word Vishanantam, right? Vishanantam levanecha. You should teach it to your children. It's talking about a thorough type of study. This is not something that you just read. This is not a book that you just, you just go through once and you're done. This is the kind of text that you could spend your whole entire life on trying to walk away with some element of truth, some element of depth, some element of seeing beyond the surface level understanding of the world. And therefore the question is, well, who are you? Are you the kind of person that just is always running around, unable to see your own reflection in the river because you're so busy and everything is always so muffled? Or are you the person that actually creates a space and time for yourself to be able to get into that reflective place where you could truly see who you are? Because again, for me, that is the ultimate question. Who are you? Who do you want to be? Because if you can't answer that question, you're going to end up in all kinds of interesting places, most of the time in very, very dangerous places. Okay? He continues and he says, where? Then Bamidbar, Ba'arva, Mul Sof, Ben Pa'aran, Ben Tofel, Lavan, Vechetzro, Vedi Zahav. And all these places are different places that he's going to be listing of different places where the Jewish people went through different trials and tribulations. V'haya v'hi ba'arba'im shana, the 40th year, ba'ashtei asar chodesh, bechad chodesh, diber Moshe b'nei Yisrael. This is in the 11th month, in the first month of the month of that Moshe is speaking to the Jewish people. This is the month before he's about to die, right? We know that he died in the month of Adar. So he reminds us of everything. And why is he doing that again? Right? Not because we don't know the history. It's because he wants us to learn from history. We know that if we are not the students of history, you and I are unfortunately going to be doomed to repeat its mistakes. So what can we do to ensure that we don't make those mistakes? Okay? The first step is to recognize that you are not a reflection of your past. Your past does not define who you are. You are who you choose to be. We say Moshe kibel Torah misinai u'masru Yeshua zakenu masru l'anshei k'nei gadol. What's this idea of misorah? It's not just a passing of a giving, right? Because that's not what we want. Do we just want to hand over our ideas, our beliefs to our children, or do we want them to want to feel a sense of ownership over it? And therefore, the word misorah isn't just a misorah of ideas. We're talking about the idea of ownership. The misorah is, I'm going to hand this over to you, and I want you to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of connection to it. So number one is, you're not tethered to your past. Number two is, where are you going in life? We often need to stop and pause and look back so that we can clarify who we are and where we're going. Because if you don't have clarity as to where you're going, your environment will tell you where to go. If you don't have a clear vision of who you are, the woke world will tell you what you're going to look like and what your kids are going to look like. And unfortunately, at that point, it's too late. The more you clarify who you are and where you're going, okay, the more simcha you will experience in your life, the more happiness you will experience in your life, because real happiness is not just being distracted by the world of materialism. Again, I'm not anti anything material. Have a nice house, drive a nice car, wear beautiful clothing, go on awesome vacations, but not at the expense of forgetting who you are. Because if your whole life becomes a life of pursuit of worldly things, unfortunately, we find a lot of people depressed in that reality. The question is why? I'll tell you why. Ready? Because we are at our core spiritual beings. We want to be connected to things that are real. And while the material world is as real as it feels as it gets, okay, there's something more. There's more meaning in helping the old lady cross the street. There's more meaning in doing chesed and helping the people that need chesed. There's more meaning in doing the things that we need to be doing to develop ourselves. And if we're not creating that space of reflecting, almost like, the symbol for the Jewish people is the moon, right? Why? So you hear different things. That just like the moon waxes and wanes, and when it's about to disappear, somehow we manage to kind of like reappear and regrow in a place of almost complete annihilation. And that's the story of the Jewish people of Tisha B'Av. We're about to be destroyed, okay, and it's over, right? But it's not over somehow. Why? Because the month of Tisha B'Av is the month of Av. And even though you and I think it's a month of mourning, really it's the month of Av, of Abba. It's the month of being with Dad. It's a month of being connected to the ultimate source. But we don't feel it that way. We're only focusing on the fact that I can't have meat today, right? Or that after Shabbat I can't launder my clothing, or that I can't take a hot shower properly, or that I can't swim next week. We're only worrying about the things that are chitzoni. But the pnimiyut of this time, the inner parts of what we're supposed to be doing during this time, is the recognition that you have something called Avinu Shabashamayim. You have a Father in heaven that is in love with you, that you're not a bad person, that you're a good person that has a lot to accomplish and a lot to do. And if we stop running and running and running and running, and if we start reminding ourselves that you and I are a moon, and all we're doing is supposed to reflect God's light into this world, because that's all we are. We're supposed to do good. How do we do good? I do good by reflecting what is good. What is the ultimate good? That ultimate good is Borei Olam. That is God. Okay, so I'm going to keep it short today. Devarim isn't just a book of things. It's not a book of words. Devarim is the book that if you spend time delving deeper into it, you'll find the words, the strength, the inspiration necessary to express the best parts of who you are. Don't allow negative thoughts, negative ideas to creep up. Don't focus on the negative things. This is the month of love, right? Because it's also the month of Tu B'Av, that's what, in 15 days, 14 days, the Shabbat, the Tu B'Av is the day of love. It's in the same month of the month of destruction. Because in Judaism, ultimately, we don't believe in Ra'ah. We don't believe in bad. Bad in the world that you and I experience is an expression of people's poor choices, not of God's desires. May we be able to be zocheh, to merit living in a world where we're actually able to believe in our best parts of who we are. May we live in a reality where we know that anything that we set our mind to, we could accomplish. May we live in a world where you and I can have the bracha of peace, where we could have the time to reflect on being the best version of ourselves, and then have the biggest blessing of actualizing it, because that, my friends, is where we find true simcha. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom Mevarach. Thank you so much for listening. Looking forward to continuing the conversation with Bezrat Hashem next week. If you're not aware, on Thursday next week at the Safra Synagogue in Manhattan, we are going to have a day of speakers, and we're going to show a movie starting at 1 o'clock at the Safra Synagogue on Thursday. Bezrat Hashem. If I don't see you before the fast, wishing you a Tzom Tov. It should be a meaningful fast. It should be the last fast. It should be the fast that ends all fasts. When Bezrat Hashem, you and I will be able to walk together, shoulder, hand in hand, to Jerusalem, right? Ending all sickness, just living in a world of peace, the way the world was meant to be. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thanks again for listening.